like to give a special thanks to Magic X Beats, produced this track, Proclaim Your Nationality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance, Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright.
Thank you for tuning in to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. I'm the author of several books, including Land of the Free, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. And also on the website, you get a chance to enroll into my coaching program, mentorship, which is Trauma to Triumph Training, which is a 6-month mentorship where we deal with racial trauma, generational trauma, and also what's known as post-traumatic slave syndrome, to deal with the issues and allow us to be the great people who we really are supposed to be. So with that, I'd like to get into our topic today. The topic today is who named you? Who named you? And this is a very important topic. This ties into everything that my show, What is Your Nationality, is about. Because one of the things, as I mentioned from the very beginning in the introductory show, was in reference to the aspect of nationality being important because of our people being subject to these names that allude to slavery, just outright, just plain and simple, straight to the point. And what I'm actually am going to do is I'm actually going to read from an article that I wrote some years ago for a newsletter called the Ancient Moabite News, and that was being distributed here in Durham, North Carolina, where I reside. And also it was inspired by a conversation I had the pleasure and opportunity to have with a young man that I recently spoke with at a festival here in Durham, North Carolina, where I reside. I attended a festival where I had set up a booth to promote my organization and the work that I do, the work that me and my colleagues do. And I got into a conversation with a young brother, who I assume was from the Army because he had an Army T-shirt. He looked like he was military, very well mannered, very composed. And we had quite a long conversation about the aspect of race, racial identity, nationality, political status. We went into reparations. We went into a lot of things that I talk about on this show, What is Your Nationality? And one of the things I understand is that though in my life, I have a circle of friends and associates, people I consider my family, my greater family, that understand, they comprehend these concepts and precepts that I speak about on my show. But I realize, figuratively speaking, I can't preach to the choir. I have to go out and engage with others who are not familiar with the subject of nationality and its importance, which is why I created the show, What is Your Nationality? Because I know that there's a lot of people who do not know really what nationality is. And then there's also people who are somewhat familiar with the concept, somewhat familiar with the groups of people who speak about it, but then they have misconceptions about what nationality is. And many of them, those who have misconceptions, think that nationality is somehow interchangeable with the term sovereignty, which I think I will I know I will have to have a episode specifically dedicated to that subject, nationality versus um, nationality versus sovereignty. What's the difference? I've spoken about that years before, and I definitely will have to speak about that again on this radio show. So we're going to get into some things I've spoke about before, but I also going to talk about some things that I haven't really gone into. So I'm excited to get into that subject. But before I go any further, we'll have to take a brief pause for the cause. However, when we come back, we will continue our discussion on this show. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. You're tuned in to WDRB, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. We'll be right back after the break.
I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I'm an everlasting spirit personality, man. Sooner control elements whenever I balance my span. Nationality is precious for your national redemption. We come out of the dead sands, gathered up at the entrance. Newcastle and Brussels, Lexical District number 1. And for the Vienna Convention, the treaty up on these punks. According to the 805 Illinois Compound Statute, the Religious Corporation Act. If you don't know, you lack truth. The statute created the Morbid Science Temple charted that Shuali still issues by a signature. He brought us, accepted a straw man for value, therefore he redeemed mine. Talking about the corporate soul being conveyed, the lean dies. Prophet was billion babies, Microdot, archangel, devils notice, there was notice. They received a low grade blow, and then the beast had no understanding. The revelation spewed water at humanity. Amaras is the statement. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. Standing here, looking at my Moorish flag. Old glory, no story. Into the ground it goes back. Into the old northwest and southwest and make some territory. No such thing as U.S. citizen, historical enforcement. Though everything is voluntary though. You're suffering by the buck and resolutions you don't dare to know. I'm rapping while I'm here to verify. 13, 14, 15, the amendment was never ratified. To my black people, where your free national name was at? Cause the test with that seemed like your own mental brain was snatched. Like Malcolm X told you many times, where was your heritage? Pick up a book and put down the alcoholic beverages, but don't stop it all at once. You get internally damaged, example, your lungs and kidneys while growing up on campus. It's time to get back to the national affairs of men. I'm talking business, watch by action, with self-accredited. I'm a citizen of the United States of America, but not a U.S. citizen. My life's embarrassing enough, it's my political status. In order to evolve, members should conduct themselves by the Constitution and bylaws. Act 6 is to proclaim no dualities pointed to by an amendment. Shoot is where I've been appointed to. The language of the 805 is key to the 1099. So just get behind the profit and corporation design, cause it's time, it's long. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn radio app and through iHeartRadio. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. I am the author of several books, including What is the Higher Self, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Also, on my website, you get a chance to enroll into my mentorship, which is known as Trauma to Triumph Training, a 6-month mentorship which deals with racial trauma, generational trauma, and post-traumatic slave syndrome, which we address and tackle. Address and we tackle it in order to actually get into our best selves as a people, to get back to the state of glory where we once were in our past. So with that, If you are just tuning in, we are discussing who named you. Who named you? And this topic is inspired by a particular article that I wrote some years ago for a newsletter known as Ancient Moabite News. And my initial inspiration to write this article was actually I wanted to write this to put into a particular brochure. I was inspired by someone asking me to kind of put something together to kind of give an introductory an introduction, if you will, to what it is I speak on, and because I was doing lectures on nationality and history and things of that nature, which is why I have this show, What is Your Nationality? And I wanted to put together a simple brochure that would kind of speak to this. And what ended up happening is that what I wrote became an article in this newsletter, Ancient Moabite News, some years ago. So what I like to do is I actually like to read it and then kind of point on, get into some points, and then our next segment, we can really dissect it and break it down. So again, the title is called Who Named You? Okay. And it starts as such. It starts with a quote. That quote is this: "The matter of the various names given to these 22 million people with all colors of every race of the globe was an act of European psychology. They gave him a name, then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they define as a color of purity. Black, they say, represents everything of evil," unquote. And that's by Noble Joe Ali. So, have you ever wondered why people describe each other according to color? Why are some people labeled as white and some others are labeled as black? Do these terms really depict a person's skin color, or do these terms determine something which is commonly overlooked? Most people are familiar with the words race and racism. When one thinks of racism, the terms white and black are commonly associated with it. However, very few people can actually define what race is. Some people associate race with genetics. In reality, the classification system of race has absolutely nothing to do with genetics. And as a reference point, you can refer to the American Anthropological Association statement on race dated May 17th, 1998. Race is a social construct which is based on a power relationship. Within this power relationship, there are people in society who are viewed as superior and people who are viewed as inferior. So, using the very words white and black as descriptions of human beings creates inequality within society. Many people have made statements such as black power, black is beautiful, and I'm black and I'm proud. These individuals who say they are black, quote unquote, black, claim that melanated people have a right to define the word black as they see fit. However, it should be realized that redefining a word does not change its original intent, nor does it change the fact that none of the inhabitants of Africa originally called themselves black. To quote Malcolm X, he said, quote, "We were robbed of our names, robbed of our language. We lost our religion, our culture, our God," unquote. It is important to realize that European slave masters first used the term blacks to describe slaves and distinguish them from free persons. So, in that sense, the term black, along with the terms Negro, colored, and African American, actually deludes to slavery. In fact, according to the Negro Law of South Carolina, which was established in the year 1848, it states that the term Negro, which is Latin for black, is, quote, confined to slave Africans, unquote, and, quote, does not embrace the free inhabitants of Africa, end quote. It goes on to list Moors in amity as among those free inhabitants of Africa. You are a free people, you are Moors. It is time to give the Europeans back their names that delude to slavery. Proclaim your nationality. Peace. Contact Brother Shem L at shem45@hotmail.com. Come and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights. And so that is pretty much the article. Is really short, but there are some very key points in that. Of course, one of the things that I mentioned, which I always mention, is that race is a social construct. And I'm not the only person who says this. There's been many people who said that. There was even a particular interview that Roland Martin did with a so-called white supremacist. And in that conversation with the white supremacist, he said it, Roland Martin stated it out of his mouth, that race is a social construct, right? And at that point in time, interestingly enough, he refused to be confined to that term. However, when he speaks to his own people, he always says black, black, black. So, you know, it appears that he picks and chooses a time when to identify with black and then when to recognize the fact that it is a social construct, that is not your identity. It's not your true identity. But there's many people who will tell you that race is a social construct. It's not strange. I also spoke about the reference from the American Anthropological Association statement on race, which I will get into really deep in the next segment of this episode. That was dated back in May 17th, 1998. And the American Anthropological Association is the largest anthropological association, largest group dealing with anthropology in the world. And they made this statement. And also, they really went in on the Federal Directive 15, which I've been telling you about since the first episode, that is really a trick bag in and of itself. And that's a federal law, a federal directive given to us, which applies to us checking those boxes, you know, and kind of confines us in that social construct of race, which serves against those of us who have been classified as Black or African American. And in the previous episode, I spoke, you know, to that point. So, you know, Malcolm X even said it himself, that we were robbed of our names, robbed of our language. We lost our religion, our culture, our God, and we also were robbed of our nationality. You know, even Muhammad Ali spoke to that, you know, our nationality being taken away from us as a people. And that nationality is so powerful and so key that once we realize its power and how it can serve us, then we will not hesitate to jump on it and proclaim our nationality, because under that, we now have political status. That's important. You know, I had the conversation, which I'll get into later, where I spoke with that young man at that event, and I spoke about the importance of the political status. And he had to acknowledge that, you know, because when we speak about things like reparations, all the people who have received reparations in this country, the United States of America, are those who have a nationality. So there's so much more we can really get into that we definitely will get into pertaining to this subject of who named you. Who named you? All right. But we have to take a brief pause for the cause. But after the break, we will continue our discussion. You are tuned into WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. Do not go anywhere because we will be right back.
If you want to educate, empower, and inspire our community, we're providing a wonderful opportunity for anyone who feels they can make a positive impact in the lives of others by applying to be an on-air radio personality. To set up an interview, call 877-342-7770. That's 877-342-7770 to apply. This is your chance to step out on faith. This is your chance to get the experience and education that you need in order to launch to the next level of greatness and make a significant difference. WDRB Media is now hiring on-air radio personalities. If this is you, no experience is required, no previous education needed. They do all the training. Call 877-342-7770 to set up your interview today.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn Radio app and through iHeartRadio. You're listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. I'm the author of several books, including How Many Days Are in the Circle, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Also on my website, you get the opportunity to enroll into the mentorship known as Trauma to Triumph Training, which is a 6-month mentorship coaching that deals with racial trauma, generational trauma, and post-traumatic slave syndrome, which we address in order to conquer those issues and raise back to the great people that we are. Also, just to remind you, on January 2022, we will have the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina. It is set to go and take place at the end of January, and we already have our first confirmed guest speaker, Sheikh Nasir Ma'at-Il. So it's going to definitely be an exciting time. You're all welcome to attend, and we will keep you posted on the specific dates, times, and location. So if you're just tuning in, we were discussing who named you. And in the previous segment, I read from my article entitled Who Named You, which was an old article that I put out some time ago on a newsletter. It was put in a newsletter called Ancient Moabite News. And I basically went through several topics of discussion. But before I dissect that particular article and really get into it, one of the things I want to speak about is the conversation I had with the young man, the young brother, the other day at the event. It was a festival in Durham, North Carolina. And I got a chance to get out and mingle with the people, talk to the people. It was a great time. The weather was nice. People were enjoying themselves. Families was out there. It was really a great time. It happens every year, particularly in, it's called the Phoenix Fest. Happens every year in the Durham, the city of Durham. And one of the things that I like about it is that you see people from all walks of life, all ideologies, but yet and still everybody seems to respect each other. I've been there several years. I had the pleasure of attending there. And one thing I can say is that I never had an incident, nothing bad I can never recall anything crazy taking place at that event. There's a lot of good energy there. So with that said, I had the opportunity during that day to speak to a young man. He was this brother was wearing a black shirt with the yellow letters across his chest saying Army. So I assumed he was in the Army. He looked like he was military. He definitely looked like he was military, and the way he conducted himself, it looks like he was in the military. Um, so I take it that he was in the Army. I hope that's the case. I hope I assumed right. So shout out to the brother. I actually never got his name, but we engaged in a great conversation, and we were talking about a lot of things. We just engaged in conversation. We talked about nationality, talked about the history of our people. One of the things I recall, because he was asking about nationality, I mentioned about the aspect of the original definition of the word American. And one thing interesting, what I liked about the brother is that as I was mentioning certain things and I was giving them references, and I always make a point when I speak to people to give them a reference that they can research it themselves. He was going in his phone, he was typing it up. I was like, okay, he's a researcher. I like that. Because a lot of times I talk to people and I'll say a lot of things, like even in this show here, what is your nationality? I give a lot of facts. I give a lot of dates. I give references, books. And I am, in my experience, I've come to the conclusion that the majority of people that hear me say these things, they don't research it anyway, which is sad. It's disappointing. But the few who do, that percentage, that smaller percentage that do actually do the research, when they hear these things, those are the people who truly get what I am saying. They truly get it. If you research this, you will truly get what I'm saying. I don't preach to anybody. I'm not about preaching. No disrespect to those who are professional preachers. If that's your thing, that is your thing to do. But I like to teach. I want to teach people, inform people. I want to inspire, but I also want to motivate, but I also definitely want to inform you, definitely give you the tools that you can use to formulate your own rational, logical conclusions based upon your own research. So this young man was actually doing that. And one of the things I mentioned was about the original definition of the word American. And one of the things I mentioned in that particular definition was that it states about the term American being the copper-colored races. Matter of fact, I can actually pull it up, and I want to be able to do that because I think that's important to read. And we got into a really, really powerful thing about that. I believe the definition comes from the American Dictionary of the English Language, Noah Webster's Dictionary of 1828. And it defines American as noun, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. So it was very clear that the term American originally applied to the copper-colored races. Now, you don't hear that term a lot. So when you say copper-colored, people don't really grasp it. So I mentioned that to the young brother, and said, "You know about copper, right?" And he was like, kind of confused. I said, "Like a penny, right? And a penny is dark." He said, "Yeah, okay, a penny." I said, "If you pull out a penny, and I was to show you, I was be like, who here at this festival would look like their skin color is that of a copper?" And mind you, it was full of melanated people all across, all shades, light, dark. And he responded, "Nobody." I said, "No, that's not true." I said, "Brother, if I put," and this brother was actually darker than me. I said, "Brother, if I pull out a penny and put it on your arm, that will match your skin closer than anybody else, closer to the people who they are calling the American Indians today." And I also mentioned about something known as the $5 Indian, which came by way of the Dawes Rolls. So the Dawes Act was that act that gave federal recognition of Native American tribes, where they would get basically certain benefits, right? So with that said, they had what's called the Dawes, DAWES rolls, which was basically a record series, a record keeping thing that kept the names, that was a registry, basically a registry of those who were considered Native Americans, or what they call today American Indian. And the term $5 Indian comes from the fact that there were Europeans, Caucasian men in particular, who would actually pay $5 to be listed in the Dawes Roll so they could receive benefits. And while that sounds crazy, I can tell you for a fact that was done. Not only was that done, it's still done to this day. I remember some years back, I went to a real estate seminar in North Carolina. I remember it clear as yesterday. And there was an Italian American man, Caucasian man. I believe he was originally from New York. And he actually, what did he do? Well, he was the presenter. He was, I guess, the real estate investor expert. And he said something that caught my ear. And I looked around in the room like, does anybody realize what this man just said? And what he literally was saying, he was breaking down that you could get, as a real estate investor, if you want to get tax benefits, you would get status with a Native American tribe. And he said you would go to, he literally said this, that you would, and it was full, I was one of the few, like maybe one of two melanated people in that room. Most of them were Caucasians. And he literally just laid it out plain simple. It's like, what you do is basically you get with one of the federally recognized tribes that are not, that are disadvantaged, financially disadvantaged, meaning it's not like the, I'll give you an example. I'll just say Cherokee. Cherokee is well known. They're more finance, those ones that have the casinos and, whatever ones, like they already have financing. So they're pretty self-sufficient. But if you go to some of the other federally recognized Native American tribes who are financially strapped, you can actually contact them and come into an agreement with them and pay for a honorary Native American status to create an LLC, which basically the way it would work was you create an LLC within their jurisdiction, you register under their I guess their Secretary of State, for lack of a better word. You would actually do it under them. So you would actually fall under your LLC, your company would fall under Native American jurisdiction. So you would get certain benefits and classifications, because in creating that LLC with that tribe, you have created a legal fiction, an artificial person. This is what the man said in the seminar, an Italian American, and he said he's done it. And because of that, he got Native American status, boom, 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 boom. Now, it's something a little different than the $5 Indian, but it still operates the same way. So that lets you know that there are people of European descent who have placed themselves within these Native American tribes to get that recognition and are classifying themselves as such, operating for the benefits, So what I was telling him about that, the young brother about that, is that what you see, the images that they're giving you most of the time of these American Indians is not the true image. Copper color is melanated. And then we went into the aspect of political status, and he actually agreed with me on the political status that reparations, the reparations is something that is not given to us due to lack of political status. Then I asked him the question of, because I mentioned in nationality, every nationality has a flag. I said, what's the black flag? What is the flag of black people? And he said, well, I think it's the red, black, and green. I said, okay, you're talking about the flag of Marcus Garvey that Marcus Garvey put forth and created for his organization, the UNIA. Now, while he did it on behalf of people who are identified as Negro, Black, and colored, that flag, which was actually originally a banner when you research it, and then became recognized, part of their organization as their flag. It's not, for one, it's not in the UN. It's not in any particular international consortium of nations that recognize that flag, because it's not tied to a nation. It's not tied to a nation. It's not tied to a government. It is not tied to a landmass. It is not tied to a history. While it was a noble gesture and a noble attempt, and the reason why Marcus Garvey even created that flag is because at that time, there was a song that was out in that time, written by some men of European descent. And that song was called "Every Race Has a Flag Except the Coon," COON, which is a derogatory term for people classified as Negro, Black, colored, and African American. So that was his response to that song that was being promoted amongst Caucasian people. So we have to realize that we have to proclaim our nationality. With a nationality, you have a true flag that connects you with a nation. And a nation is a group of people organized, existing in the form of an organized dual society according to law, that you find in Black's Law Dictionary. That's the definition. So these are some of the things that we spoke about. And, I just say that to say in this, when we speak about who named you, we have to understand these names: Negro, Black, colored, African American. None of these names are names that originally were given to us by us. They were given to us by another group of people who were set out to dominate us in every aspect of life. Those very names were given to us. It's not even in our original language. Like Malcolm X said, we robbed us of our language. We lost our language, right? So it stands to reason that the people who were responsible for the enslavement of our ancestors had no interest in, one, having us keep our names that connected us with the land, because the Amistad case, which I also told the brother, proved that, the same judge that ruled in favor of the free inhabitants of Africa that took over that La Amistad ship is the same Supreme Chief Justice that ruled against Dred Scott because of nationality. One group of people had nationality and one person did not. Right? That was the key thing that was missing with Dred Scott. No nationality. So that being said, that being stated, the people who named you are the ones who set out to control you. Whatever you answer to, if you answer to somebody calling you out of your name, then that person controls you, right? Like in today's time, like the B word, we won't say that word, but women, it was a time where it was very common. You don't call me a B word. Don't call me out of my name. But now you have women who not only will answer to the B word from men, but will call each other the B word. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And the nationality, our name has to be, that identifies us, should instantaneously associate us with land, history, and culture. As the late, great Dr. John Henry Clark said, the late, great scholar, Dr. John Henry Clark. And you can definitely look up his work for those who are not familiar with him. He's a legend in terms of African history of our people here in America as well. So that said, I'm going to actually read from an excerpt. I'm going to read an excerpt from the American Anthropological Association Statement on Race. And I mentioned about it in the previous segment in my article, but I'm actually going to take the time out to actually read a section and just expand on it, because it kind of goes deeper into this whole thing about the why these people of European descent, why this is an act of European psychology in the naming of all the different people. So I just want to get into that real quick. So it says, from its inception, this modern concept of race was modeled after an ancient theorem of the great chain of being, which posited natural categories on a hierarchy established by God or nature. Thus, race was a mode of classification linked specifically to peoples in the colonial situation. It subsumed a growing ideology of inequality devised to rationalize European attitudes and treatment of the conquered and enslaved peoples. Proponents of slavery, in particular during the 19th century, used race to justify the retention of slavery. The ideology magnified the differences between Europeans, Africans, and Indians, established a rigid hierarchy of socially exclusive categories, underscored and bolstered unequal rank and status differences, and provided the rationalization that the inequality was natural or God-given. The different physical traits of, quote, African Americans, unquote, and Indians became markers or symbols of their status differences, as they were constructing U.S. society, leaders among European Americans fabricated the cultural / behavioral characteristics associated with each race, linking superior traits with Europeans and negative and inferior ones to blacks and Indians. Numerous arbitrary and fictitious beliefs about the different peoples were institutionalized and deeply embedded in American thought. Early in the 19th century, the growing fields of science began to reflect the public consciousness about human differences. Differences among the racial categories were projected to their greatest extreme when the argument was proposed that Africans, Indians, and Europeans were separate species, and with Africans the least human and closer taxonomically to apes. So it's basically saying that they had proposed and promoted and propagated that Africans were closest to apes and less human. Okay, so it goes on and on with that. But my point of even saying all of this is this, and that is basically the fact that we have to realize that, again, race is a social construct. It's not meant to benefit us. Okay? The whole white and black thing is not meant to benefit us. We got to get back to our nationality. And we'll keep talking about this, and hopefully people will wake up to it. But with that said, we're going to get into the conclusion of the show right after we take a brief pause for the cause. And after the break, we will continue and close the discussion. You are listening to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. Don't go anywhere, because we will be right back.
Calling all business owners, all independent artists, and all nonprofit organizations. If you are in need of radio advertising, we encourage you to call 877-342-7770. That's 877-342-7770. Through their Community Give Back project, there is an entrepreneur foundation that is paying for free radio advertising. That's right, I said free, F-R-E-E, in support of our small business owners, independent artists, and nonprofit organizations. Please call 877-342-7770 in order to receive your free radio advertising today.
Hi everyone, this is Miss Divine of Divine Touch Multimedia, letting you know that I got your back. If you're out there and you're looking for a photo shoot, if you're looking for someone to capture your event, if you're looking for someone to obtain the essence of your special day or your special occasion, make sure you contact us at Divine Touch Multimedia at 980-220-2424. That's 980-220-2424. Our work speaks for itself. We have trained professionals in the industry of professional photography, videography, graphic designs, and video editing. Be sure to check out our website at www.divinetouchmultimedia. That's DIVINETOUCHMULTIMEDIA.com. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Divine Touch Multimedia LLC and on Instagram at Divine Touch Multimedia. We look forward to serving you in excellence. Divine Touch Multimedia, 980-220-2424, 980-220-2424.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn app and through iHeartRadio. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I am your host, Shem L. I'm the author of several books, including What is the Devil Sometimes Called, which you can purchase on my website, Shemel.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Also, just to get into, you can also enroll in the mentorship known as Trauma to Triumph training, which is a 6-month mentorship coaching, and which we deal with racial trauma, generational trauma, and post-traumatic slave syndrome. So we can deal with these issues and get back to the state that we once were in our glorious past. So stay with that. Also, tune in for the upcoming January 2022 Social and Economic Conference, the first Social and Economic Conference in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina. We're looking at the end of January, and we already have our first confirmed speaker in the conference, which is none other than Sheikh Nasir Ma'at-Il. So it's going to be a great one. You're all welcome to attend. So with that, as we get into it, we're going to just go ahead and conclude with today's subject. If you're just tuning in, we were discussing and have been discussing who named you. Who named you? And, we talked on a lot about certain things. Like I said, I've had conversations with many people. Recently had a conversation with a young man who I take was from the Army, a young brother, and we had a very interesting conversation about nationality, reparations, political status, the origin of names, flag, how your flag should connect you to a people. Just another thing I forgot to mention is that I made a mention about the recent movements, particularly the Black Lives Matter movement. And I said that, and I say this with, no disrespect to any organization, not speaking radical against any member of any organization. But I just made the point that when we make a statement like Black Lives Matter, if you remember, I stated in my article earlier that, we've come across many statements where we try to empower ourselves through the word black, such as black is beautiful, black power, I'm black and I'm proud, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Black is king, that was a recent one with Beyonce. And then from there we get to Black Lives Matter. Now it's just Black Lives Matter. Like the comedian said, I forget the guy's name. So, not matter more, just matter. And I asked the brother the question. I asked the young brother question. When we say Black Lives Matter to whom? To whom should it matter? Why are we saying this? Why is that a statement? And when you look at it, you're really analyzing it's a plea. It's a plea, and it's from a position of powerlessness for a group of people to say Black Lives Matter. Like I said, if you were at a party or you was at a function and you wanted to get in a party and you wasn't accepted, or you you had a potluck and you want a dish and nobody, wanted to eat your dish, that sounds something like something that you would say, oh, well, this matters too. Like we count,